Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're taking a close look at Kendrick Lamar's new album, GNX, with Professor Sky's amazing YouTube breakdown.
Yeah, Professor Sky goes way beyond the typical track-by-track review.
Oh, for sure. They examine Kendrick through these three lenses.
Yeah.
The car, the prophet, and the rapper.
It's so smart.
Right. Get ready for some serious insights.
Definitely. So I gotta say, the way Professor Sky links Kendrick to the Buick Grand National GNX, it's just brilliant.
It really makes you think, right?
It does. They're both symbols of Black excellence. Rare, powerful, not for everyone. The GNX, it was released in '87, the same year Kendrick was born.
No way. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and Professor Sky calls it a last gasp of a certain type of car, rear-wheel drive.
Right.
Before the industry shifted to front-wheel drive, efficiency became king.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean. So is Professor Sky saying that Kendrick is also a last gasp of something in hip-hop?
It's definitely a thought-provoking analogy. You can't deny how important cars are in hip-hop, especially West Coast rap.
For sure.
I mean, remember that iconic line, cruising down the street in my 6.5? Cars aren't just transportation, right?
No, definitely not.
They're symbols. Status, success, rebellion even. It's a whole thing.
It's so true. Okay, so let's unpack this car connection further. Professor Sky says the GNX, it was unique, almost rebellious for its time.
It really was.
Are they saying that Kendrick is also rebelling against something in hip-hop?
I think they're highlighting Kendrick's unique position, how he fits into hip-hop's evolution,
Yeah.
He's pushing boundaries, not just lyrically, but thematically, too. He's not afraid to challenge the status quo.
And, I mean, when you think about it, that's exactly what that GNX did in the car world.
Exactly. It was a game changer.
So it's not just about the car itself, it's what it represents. It's like Kendrick's driving this rare, powerful machine, defying expectations and paving his own lane. It's not just him either. Professor Sky mentions Tyler, the creator, and his love for his Enzo Ferrari.
Oh, yeah, it's a classic.
It makes me wonder, are there other artists who have prominently featured specific cars in their music?
I'm sure there are.
What do these choices tell us about them, as artists?
It's a great question. It speaks to the power of symbols in music. Cars can represent so much more than just vehicles.
Totally.
Aspiration, freedom, rebellion, even identity. They can be super personal.
It's making me rethink all those rap songs about cars now. Okay, but hold on. Professor Sky doesn't stop there. They take this whole analysis to another level by calling Kendrick, you ready for this? A prophet.
Right.
A prophet.
It's wild.
Okay, so help me out here. For those of us who aren't biblical scholars, what exactly was a prophet's deal?
Well, in the Bible, prophets were considered messengers.
Yeah.
Chosen by God to speak to the people.
Okay, got it.
They often warned people of their wrongdoing. Called for them to, repent. But prophets also offered messages of hope, promising a brighter future if they changed their ways. Professor Sky sees Kendrick taking on this prophetic role. But in the context of hip-hop...
So Kendrick's judging the current state of hip-hop. Is that what Professor Sky is getting at?
Yeah, in a way. But it's not a simple judgment. Professor Sky argues that Kendrick's calling out what they call the wickedness within hip-hop.
Okay, wickedness.
Yeah, but he's also highlighting the artists who are staying true to hip-hop's core values.
So who exactly is getting judged here? And what are these core values of hip-hop? Can we define those?
Professor Sky doesn't name names explicitly.
Gotcha.
But they point to mainstream trends and, the commercialization of hip-hop.
Right.
They call that Babylon.
So what does Babylon represent?
Basically, the forces that have corrupted the original message and purpose of hip-hop, that authentic voice.
Whoa, that's a heavy comparison. So is Professor Sky saying that mainstream hip-hop is bad?
I don't think it's about good versus bad.
Okay.
It's more about staying true to hip-hop's roots. Remember, hip-hop emerged as a voice for the marginalized.
Yeah, totally.
A way to express social commentary, to share stories, to challenge the status quo.
For sure.
Professor Sky is saying that some aspects of modern hip-hop have strayed from those original intentions.
Okay, I'm with you. So where does Kendrick fit into all of this? If he's the prophet, what's his message?
Well, according to Professor Sky, Kendrick's not only critiquing the state of hip-hop, he's also pointing towards a New Jerusalem.
A New Jerusalem.
Yeah, a vision for a more authentic and meaningful future for the genre. It's a vision, a hope.
Okay, so if Kendrick is the prophet, who are his disciples?
Who's helping him build this New Jerusalem?
Yeah, exactly.
Professor Sky points to Kendrick's support for certain artists like Schoolboy Q?
Right, from his label TDE.
Right, and Doja Cat.
Doja Cat. Interesting.
Who, despite her mainstream success, has faced criticism for not fitting neatly into any one genre.
Yeah, she does her own thing.
Totally. And Professor Sky argues that these artists represent a new wave of talent.
Okay, a new wave.
Yeah, pushing boundaries, defying expectations.
It sounds like Kendrick is trying to usher in a new era of hip-hop.
Yeah.
One that's less about chasing trends.
And more about pushing boundaries, right?
Yeah. Embracing diversity. Staying true to the art form.
Exactly. But Professor Sky doesn't shy away from the complexity of Kendrick's prophetic role. They even draw a parallel between the fall of Lucifer, the angel who rebelled against God,
Whoa.
and the challenges faced by Black people in America, particularly those who achieve a certain level of success.
Okay, so like success that threatens the established order.
Right, and they bring in Rodney Carmichael's essay from NPR.
Oh, I know that essay. It was so good.
Which explores the complexities of Black identity and the challenges of being a cultural icon.
It adds another layer to this prophet analogy, highlighting the weight Kendrick might be carrying, as a representative of Black culture.
It's a heavy burden.
For sure. It's clear that this whole prophet thing is about more than just Kendrick's music. It's about his cultural impact.
Absolutely.
His responsibility as a voice for his generation, and the challenges he faces as a Black artist.
Yeah.
Navigating a complex and often contradictory world.
Right, and let's not forget, he's not just a prophet, he's also a rapper.
Yeah.
And his rapping on GNX is anything but predictable.
Right. I was going to say.
Professor Sky breaks his style down into 3 modes.
3 modes.
Bitter battle bangers.
Oh, I like that.
Sweet love songs, and morale music.
That's interesting. So can we break these down a bit? Like, what are these different modes all about?
Totally. So the bitter battle bangers showcase Kendrick's lyrical skills, like his willingness to confront those who he sees as betraying hip-hop.
It's where we hear that holy wrath you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
That righteous anger.
Yeah.
Okay, so if these bitter battle bangers are where we hear Kendrick's judgment, where do we see his hope?
Well, I think the morale music is key to that. These tracks are introspective, exploring themes of personal growth, spirituality, the artistic process itself.
Okay, so like he's reflecting on his own journey.
Totally. Acknowledging his flaws, searching for deeper meaning.
This was a big theme in his last album, too, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. Like, this seems like an ongoing exploration for him.
Definitely.
A journey.
It's not just about judging others, it's about looking inward, too.
Right, exactly. And it ties back to that prophet analogy. True prophets, they don't just point fingers. They also examine their own hearts.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm with you. Now, what about these sweet love songs? This seems like a departure for Kendrick.
Yeah, it's surprising. You don't usually associate prophets with love songs, right?
Really, no.
But Professor Sky argues that these songs are essential to understanding Kendrick's message of hope.
Okay, so how do love songs fit into a message of hope?
They show his vulnerability, his capacity for love and connection, even amidst the darkness and judgment.
It's like finding light in the shadows. Yeah, something like that.
I'm really curious to hear how these love songs actually play out on the album. But before we get into specific tracks, there's another thing Professor Sky mentions.
Oh, yeah.
The guest appearances. They point out that most of the features on GNX are relatively unknown West Coast artists. Like, that's not what I expected from a Kendrick Lamar album.
Right. You'd think he'd be collaborating with all the big names, like the Drakes and the Beyoncés.
I know, right?
But this choice is fascinating. It suggests that Kendrick might be shifting his focus, moving away from the mainstream, like shining a light on underground talent.
Interesting. So is he saying that the future of hip-hop lies in these underground scenes?
Is he trying to elevate these artists, bring them to a wider audience?
Exactly.
It's definitely possible. And it ties back to that New Jerusalem idea, right?
Right. Okay, yeah.
Maybe Kendrick is creating a space for these artists to thrive, a space that's less about commercial success and more about artistic expression and community.
It's almost like he's stepping back from the spotlight a bit, taking on more of a curator role.
Yeah.
Guiding listeners toward new sounds and new voices.
Totally. And this stepping back idea is also reflected in Kendrick's rapping style on some of the tracks.
Oh, really? How so?
Professor Sky mentions that there are moments where his flow is more relaxed, less technically complex than what we're used to.
Okay. Less complex.
Yeah, less intricate wordplay.
But wouldn't some people see that as a step backwards? Like he's lost a step or something? Like he's not as good anymore?
Some might. But Professor Sky argues that the shift in style, it's intentional.
Okay.
It's not about showing off his skills anymore. It's about conveying a different mood, a different energy, like letting the message dictate the flow, not the other way around.
So he's not trying to prove anything anymore.
Exactly. He's comfortable enough to just, let the music flow naturally.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's interesting to think about this shift in the context of his overall message. Is he trying to make his music more accessible,
Right.
to a wider audience?
Is he breaking free from the expectations of what a Kendrick Lamar album should sound like? Like, what we think it has to be.
I think that's part of it.
It's definitely making me rethink what I expect from him as an artist. But there's another unexpected twist Professor Sky points to: the presence of Latinx culture on the album.
Oh, yeah.
I have to admit, I completely missed this on my first listen.
It's easy to miss those nuances.
It is. So what are we talking about here?
They mention the use of Spanish throughout,
Okay.
the sampling of Latin freestyle music, and even the fact that Mexican-American culture is so deeply ingrained in Compton, where Kendrick grew up. It's like Kendrick is broadening the scope of hip-hop, incorporating influences that have often been overlooked or marginalized.
It's not just about Kendrick's personal journey, then. It's about expanding the boundaries of what hip-hop can be.
Right.
Creating a more inclusive and diverse soundscape. It's a bigger statement. Precisely. And it ties back to that New Jerusalem idea. Again, maybe Kendrick is envisioning a future for hip-hop that embraces its global roots.
Global roots.
Drawing inspiration from a wider range of cultures and traditions.
This is all blowing my mind. Professor Sky is really challenging me to think about this album on a whole other level. I can't wait to hear how they connect all these dots.
Me too. What specific tracks do they highlight?
Right. Let's get into the music itself. I feel like we've only scratched the surface. Like there's so much to unpack here, so many layers.
Totally.
So what are some specific tracks Professor Sky highlights? What really stood out to them?
Well, they dive deep into this track called Reincarnated.
Okay, Reincarnated.
Which samples, get this, Tupac's Made Redacted.
Oh, Tupac.
This song really plays with the idea of Kendrick as a reincarnation of Tupac.
I can see that.
Especially given, Tupac's own lyrics about reincarnation and some of his unreleased stuff.
Right.
It's like Kendrick is placing himself within a lineage, of these iconic rappers.
Yeah, a lineage.
But what's interesting is Professor Sky's take on the deeper meaning.
Okay, what do they say?
Professor Sky suggests that Reincarnated is more than just a tribute. It's a complex exploration of spiritual themes, like this idea of Black people being exiled and punished from heaven.
Whoa, okay. That's heavy.
It is. They even connect it back to the fall of Lucifer, referencing that Rodney Carmichael essay again.
Right.
It's a heavy interpretation, but it really makes you think about the historical and spiritual weight Kendrick might be carrying as a Black artist in America.
It's definitely a lot to process, but it's fascinating how Professor Sky connects those dots, highlighting the depth of Kendrick's work. What other tracks stood out to them?
Professor Sky also analyzes whacked-out murals, which they call bitter battle banger. Remember those?
Oh, yeah, I love that term, bitter battle bangers.
It's where Kendrick seems to be directly addressing his critics, those who question his choices, his evolution as an artist.
Yeah, like, is he selling out or is he staying true?
Exactly. And there's this one line Professor Sky points to where Kendrick says, "I probably built the pyramids."
What? I probably built the pyramids.
It's obviously a boast, right?
Yeah.
But it also has this playful, tongue-in-cheek quality.
Yeah.
It's like he's acknowledging his greatness, but also like poking fun at taking himself too seriously.
That's so Kendrick. He could be so serious and profound 1 minute and then drop a line like that and make you laugh.
Yeah.
It's a perfect balance of like weight and wit.
Exactly. He's got that balance.
Speaking of balance, one of the most surprising tracks Professor Sky talks about is Luther.
Oh, yeah. This one's interesting.
It's a love song, right? Featuring SCA.
Yeah. This one really threw Professor Sky for a loop. It's such a departure.
What makes this song so different? Is it the sound, the lyrics?
It's both. Professor Sky describes it as a classic, quiet storm groove, drawing inspiration from artists like Anita Baker and Luther Vandross.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's a lush, romantic soundscape. Not what you'd expect from Kendrick.
It sounds like he's really exploring different sides of himself.
Yeah, on this album. Not just lyrically, but sonically, too.
But is there a deeper meaning behind this love song? Like, what's the significance?
Professor Sky points out that it samples If This World Were Mine.
Okay.
Originally recorded by Marvin Gaye and Tammy Terrell in the 60s. and later covered by Luther Vandross and Cheryl Lynn in the 80s.
So it's like Kendrick's placing himself within this lineage of iconic soul singers.
Exactly. Bridging different generations through music.
It's not just paying homage, it's tapping into that rich emotional legacy, reinterpreting it for a new generation.
Right.
It's making me think about the power of sampling, how it can be used to create these conversations between generations within music.
It is.
Like a musical time machine, connecting the past, present, and future.
Totally. And Professor Sky also points to the use of these West Coast synth sounds throughout the album, drawing comparisons to artists like Egyptian Lover and world-class Wreckin' Crews.
Okay.
It's like he's paying tribute to the roots of West Coast hip-hop.
Right. While also pushing the sound forward.
Exactly. Like, I'm not forgetting where I came from, but I'm not afraid to experiment and evolve.
There's that balance again.
It's all about balance.
But what about that New Jerusalem idea? Does Professor Sky see any of that playing out in specific tracks?
Definitely. They point to Dodger Blue, which is a love song, but it's dedicated to Los Angeles.
Okay. A love song to L.A.
And Professor Sky sees it as a key example of Kendrick's vision for the future of hip-hop.
Yes.
You know, more inclusive, more collaborative.
Okay. I can see that.
The track features a diverse lineup of West Coast artists, including some lesser-known names, all coming together to celebrate their city and their shared love of music.
It sounds like Kendrick is using his platform to shine a light on these artists. Give them a chance to be heard.
Exactly. Professor Sky even compares it to Beyoncé's cover of Blackbird,
Oh, wow.
where she invited all those young black country stars to perform with her.
Right.
It's about mentorship, about creating space for new voices, passing the torch.
It's a beautiful image. Kendrick as this musical conductor, you know, bringing all these diverse talents together.
Yeah, creating something truly special.
But we were talking earlier about how Kendrick's rapping style seems different on this album. Less complex.
Right, more laid back, almost conversational.
Right, like he's just talking to you.
So the question is he intentionally simplifying his style to make it more accessible?
To reach a wider audience.
Or is he challenging our expectations of what a Kendrick Lamar album should sound like?
Right. Our expectation, like, is he messing with us?
Maybe he is. Is he saying the future of hip-hop lies in breaking free from, this obsession with technical skills, embracing something more raw?
More authentic.
Yeah. Professor Sky leaves it open for us to think about.
It's a good question. But it's clear he's making a choice to shift his style. And that's going to spark some debate.
It already has.
Okay, before we wrap up, what about the last track, the album closer, Gloria? What's the significance there?
Professor Sky describes Gloria as like a blend of morale music and sweet love songs.
Okay.
But they suggest a deeper layer. It seems to be about a relationship, right? With a woman named Whitney.
Okay, so like a love song.
But Professor Sky argues that Gloria is actually about Kendrick's relationship with his pen, with writing itself.
Wow, okay.
Like a powerful metaphor for his artistic ambition, that drive to create, the sacrifices that come with it.
Yeah, the sacrifices of being an artist.
And the title itself, Gloria, is so loaded.
It is. Is he seeking glory, or is he trying to give glory to something greater?
That's the tension Professor Sky sees throughout the whole album.
Yeah, okay.
Kendrick's grappling with his ego, his ambition, his place in the world, and the music becomes the space for him to, work through it, search for some kind of resolution.
This deep dive has been a wild ride. Professor Sky's analysis has really opened my eyes. This album's more than just songs. It's a statement, a reflection, a conversation starter. It's an invitation to think critically, question our assumptions, engage with art on a deeper level. It's a reminder that the most rewarding art often challenges us, provokes us, and leaves us with questions.
More questions than answers.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. Professor Sky has given us so much to think about, so many threads to pull at. Now it's our turn as listeners to dive into GNX, to really let the music wash over us, and to come to our own conclusions.
Exactly. Go listen, explore, and let the music guide you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Kendrick Lamar's GNX. We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration.